Welcome to the show, everybody. Here is mystery sound number 1. Oh, I got it. That's a good one. That one. And then what about this one?
Kangaroo.
Oh, no.
Oh, this one again.
Damn it.
Kangaroo.
All right. This is done in 3, 2, 1.
Kangaroo.
And no more kangaroos. All right. Health and happiness, everyone. Welcome to the Strength and Motion Show, an online experience curated specifically for the members and fans of Strength and Motion Academy. If you haven't heard of our space before, we are a 24/7 gym in Midvale, Western Australia, and our goal is to provide a space where people can build a strong and mobile body using a functional and holistic health approach to training and life. If this is your first time listening to the show, then thank you for tuning in, and I strongly encourage you, I'm looking across from Nav as well, we strongly encourage you to get stuck into our first 5 episodes. So these first 5 episodes are a complete deep dive into # the holistic way, which is our 4-pillar approach to achieving health and fitness mastery. As experienced health and fitness coaches, we have identified movement, nutrition, sleep, and stress as the 4 key areas to always prioritize in order to live healthy and happy. You can do so by simply scrolling to the beginning of this episode list or search the Strength and Motion Show on YouTube and Facebook. Now, today, Nav, we are talking the future of fitness. The fitness world is transforming rapidly with the rise of social media platforms and also at the speed of which information can be spread rapidly, especially you and I have seen over the last couple of years massively. Yep. This speed is taking information did I write that right? This speed is making information very confusing for people to keep up with and ultimately making people lost, confused, and overwhelmed. So in this episode, we intend to get you clear on what's happening at the moment, where we see the industry heading as coaches and as people in the forefront of the industry, and what you need to know now in order to get the health and performance goals that you desire. So Nav, welcome, co-host of the podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for being here. Welcome. And what are you most excited to talk about today and why?
Yeah, this topic is extremely important to me. And I wrote here that it's the importance of function and well-being within our lives that I'm most excited to talk about, especially in the health and fitness industry, because there's been a tremendous amount of conversation surrounding aesthetics and performance for sports, for instance, but very little conversation surrounding the function and well-being to perform within our everyday lives. So how do we wake up feeling good, be in a good mood so we treat our partner right, we treat our friends right, that we perform well and charismatically within our work and our career? How do we impact the people around us? These are the conversations that matter most to me, especially as I'm getting older, turning 32 this year.
Woohoo, 32.
Absolutely. So I think as I'm getting older, my interest and ego and trying to look the best or perform the best within the gym doesn't matter too much for me. It's more so, how can I be the best human being in general so I can serve the world the best, so I can serve my future children, my business partner, my relationships with friends. How can I be of sound mind to have crucial conversations that are important to the people around me and myself? And I think shifting health and fitness towards that, which we'll dive into more, is paramount to achieve a lot of that function and well-being within our lives.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that as well, both in my own journey, in your journey, observing it as well. But it's like that, like it comes with age. You know, when we all tend to start. I think you and I both started for similar reasons, as most people do, is just wanting to see that validation in front of the mirror and seeing themselves progress on their journey. But over time, especially as we notice in our target market with the gym as well, and especially with a lot of our older clients, and when I say older, I'm talking about like 30 plus, not like still young, but that desire just to feel good, you know, as opposed to just look good. And people have a vibe, man, you know, and you can tell when people are stiff and trying to, like guys are trying to hold their chest proud rather than just being proud. And there's a big difference there, and that's shown and felt within somebody else's posture as well. And if you want to be a good father, or if you want to be a good leader, or let's say you want to be a good salesperson in your job, or you just want to be a good co-worker or something, if you're sitting there with like that stiffness where you're trying to look like you're strong, it kind of triggers a lot of people to tense up around you as well, and tense your kids up, and even the animals around you, your pets, they tend to get a bit tighter as well. And so that's a very interesting thing that we all tend to go through, but we only ever experience it over time, which is a very interesting thing. But yeah, I'm definitely keen to get into this, which is exciting. So now to kick off this episode, I really thought about it, and I'm like, well, if we're going to talk about the future of fitness, I think we should just touch base on a brief history of fitness and where it came from, because I like to, well, actually, we're both getting into history. Maybe that comes with becoming 30 as well, is getting interested in what's happened in the past. But when we look at what's happened in the past, it really gives us a bit of a better understanding on where we're heading into the future. I think it's a good saying, in order to understand where we're heading, we need to know where we've come from. And I think we can even start to like notice some cycles that happen within, I guess, humanity and the relationship with fitness. And we'll go through that over this episode. But I've actually wrote a bunch of notes here. As I did I actually got really sucked into doing the research. I found it very, very fascinating. I was very interested in it. But look, the more earlier forms of training, they usually revolved around like physical training or toughness or military preparation. There wasn't so much the training for sport or aesthetic. It was all just based around war, really. And it was very much more of a masculine and men-based thing, right? Yep. And so this also did include lots of martial arts. I was trying to figure out like, where did it all come from? Where did it all stem from? And it seems more martial arts started first, and then the practice of martial arts started to integrate ways of resistance training, whether it was like the classic, what's that Kung Fu movie where the guy's walking up and down with the buckets of water and just walking up and down the stairs over and over and over again.
I'm only thinking of that comedy one, like Kung Pao or something.
Kung Pao into the fist. Maybe
that's all I'm thinking about, to be honest.
With Panda and Jack Black, is that the one? Yeah. Oh no, Kung Pao into the fist. Yeah, the guy with the talking tongue.
With the girl with the 3 boobs.
Oh, I forgot that was a movie. I want to watch that now. That was really good. Kung Pao into the fist. Yeah.
I don't know the whole title.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's one. But anyway, so that's where a lot of the training really stemmed from, was different expressions of martial arts from all around the world. All around the world, they're different. Different cultures had different expressions, but they were all a martial art. They were all some sort of combat-based thing. And there's records from like the early centuries of ancient Rome, ancient Greece, through to the European Renaissance era in the Middle Age, of men engaging in athletic movements or with the use of weights, stones, or weighted weapons in order to prepare them for combat. So I found it quite interesting. I think it was the ancient in Rome, they used a lot of they would train with weapons that were twice the weight of the weapons they would use in combat, so that when they were using their combat weapons, they just felt lighter. And so that was them starting to figure out like heavy training with heavier things made people stronger and increased endurance. And that's where we started to notice that. And in each era, there also were records of like some sort of sport or some sort of feat of strength or athleticism for the purpose of entertainment as well. And there's a bit of a blend there from like the gladiator era as well, in which, you know, people would just watch the actual warriors fight. And that's also where I think judo and jiu-jitsu also stemmed from, is that a lot of the warriors were actually dying in order just to entertain the crowd. When if times were at peace, then the warriors would be fighting each other for entertainment purpose. When there was actually some sort of war or battle going on, then the sport would stop and then the warriors would actually go out and fight. But that's what I found really interesting. It was all based around combat, really. And so then looking into it, the Olympics was probably the most well-known event, which features plenty of different disciplines, and that started in the BC times in ancient Greece, and then there's also a bunch of wars happened and the Olympics stopped again, and then they resumed again later down the track. But beside that, martial arts, various forms of weaponry training and wrestling seem to have the oldest records from around 3000 BC and spans across from ancient China, Asia, Middle East, Africa, and into Europe. Really all around the world is where it came from. And what I find is the most fascinating point here is that all the early records of physical preparation and resistance training all stem from the need to perform. They were all around performance, again, which usually revolved around combat. So that was something I found very, very fascinating. And gymnastics was also that started as part of the Olympic era as well. But that was the other thing that started to emerge very early on when I was looking into it, is gymnastics and variations of gymnastic sports seem to be the most popular non-combat form of resistance training and physical fitness, which had pretty much been a thing since its birth about 2,500 years ago, give or take a couple hundred years. So that was kind of the story from where everything came from. And it's very interesting that it wasn't until the end of the tail end of the 19th century that bodybuilding and training for vanity started to emerge, and that became super popular. In fact, it became one of the most popular things. And back then, a lot of the heavy lifting was actually more reserved for like the strongmen and the circus performers. And as I was reading into it, that's when the transition started, is that it was the circus performers and the strongmen were doing these feats of act, these feats of strength, these acts of strength. And what was happening was that the people were more in awe of their physiques. And then that's when I guess human psychology and marketing took over, and then people just started training for aesthetic because they assumingly would have started to notice how much attention people were getting. And also like capitalism was really strong after 1943, once the World War had ended, and that's when America took over as the main power, and then their economy kicked off, and then America was the strongest dollar, and then that was like the next 50 years, the rich years. That's when all the businesses started booming again. And as we know in business, once you find a lot of attention, you can just market and sell, and that seemed like the rise of the bodybuilding era, which was really, really interesting. So, Nav, I know you've been watching a bit of history docos lately as well, and you also did martial arts in your you still do actually. You've done martial arts your whole entire life, so I'm actually interested to hear, did you or have you come across any interesting characters of strength back then, or do you or have you had any favorite martial artists or martial arts?
I think all martial arts intrigue me. I'm obsessed with martial arts in general. And the history of all that, as you mentioned, I think the reason why things are shifting today is because we're in a time, and only a select countries and locations around the world have this benefit of having freedom and peace and the ability to have the space to heal and find relaxation within their body. All of these sports originally, so even if we talk about martial arts and combat training, that would have been just to survive so you don't lose your home, so you don't lose your children, your family, right?
Yeah.
And it still would have been the same in regards to gladiators. It wasn't necessary. I'm sure some of them would have wanted to do it for legacy, but majority of them would have been forced into it to provide for their family or to even just live. Like it would have been slavery, like most gladiators were.
Yeah.
And we got to accept that a lot of our history is surrounding slavery.
Yeah,
and
we've come from dark times.
Massive dark times, slavery, war. And there's still, look at Ukraine and Russia, right? There's still places around the world that are experiencing this. And we're lucky here in WA in 2023, 2 young men, that are able to actually look at their movement and their function to correct that. So all of the history surrounds martial arts and combat for survival.
Yeah.
And also we're in a time where we have so much technology. We have YouTube and Netflix. And like you mentioned, in the 1900s when Hollywood and TV and movies would have come out, we'd have had all the action heroes, had Arnold Schwarzenegger coming out, and that would have inspired people to look like that and be like that because they grab attraction and attention. And there was a lack of education or mentorship or leadership surrounding moving for health and well-being.
Yeah,
and that's where our history comes from. It's all from war and slavery and trying to survive. And we're at different times now.
Yeah, we absolutely are. And it's, again, what we mentioned there is that the ability of information to spread so rapidly has really assisted in these things taking off. But then what we're also noticing is that because information can be spread so fast, then a lot of the wrong information is getting spread so quickly as well.
Yeah.
That's a really fascinating thing. And that's what we want to address today. So anything else that you want to touch on the history of martial arts?
No, I think that's pretty good.
Beautiful. Cool. So really we just wanted to touch base on that because now it's the nitty gritty of we're going to start talking about pretty much the late 19th century and onwards from about 1890 onwards is when bodybuilding started to kick off, because that's really essentially the industry that we're still currently in, where people come to the gym and they want to lift weights and they want to get big and strong. Exactly what I wanted when I used to go on simplyshredded.com and bodybuilding.com. And
T-Nation.
Yeah, all of that. And I also had I also saw like a bunch of like movie characters and a lot of people on TV, and I was like, man, that guy's fucking huge.
Yeah. Even like James Bond, James Bond was an aesthetic. Well,
he was.
Besides the earlier James Bond, really, actually. He was
I'm
pretty
never going to be that hairy.
But if you look at like Superman or Batman, and they're getting more and more jacked.
They are.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, super jacked. And you're like, man, what are these guys on?
Well, we know what they're on.
We know what they're on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Really, bodybuilding and powerlifting is when these structured forms came in with the introduction. Well, I shouldn't say the introduction of science, but I guess more of the introduction of scientific research and the constant trial and error and people coming through to collaborate notes. That's also the beautiful part of being able to of technology and engaging that with that to connect with people from the other side of the world.
Yeah.
The fact that emails now are a thing. Well, back then, when emails came through, then people could actually share their information, communicate from across the world within seconds, and that allowed a lot of the scientists and a lot of the peer-reviewed studies to then shift around the world really, really quickly, which is cool. Yep. And also, again, with the lack of war going on, that just allows for copious amounts of sports and entertainment to then be held as well. And with that competitiveness, all those resources go into competing against team after team and club after club. And so a lot of the things that we study now as well are people that have worked with athletes also and have brought those, we're bringing those training protocols into the general public's practice as well. So, I also really kind of want to address what are some of the main problems that we've seen come to light over the last decade, because every light has its shadow, right? And so although there was a lot of bodybuilding and powerlifting that really helped a lot of people like transform their lives, and that really helped us transform our lives, it also then brought us into a whole nother set of issues that we have faced within ourselves, we have faced within our clients. And really these are the things that we're going to discuss today that we see as the catalyst for fixing these problems, that these problems are the catalyst for the industry shifting. The problems that the current era has given us from bodybuilding and powerlifting, by the industry now starting to address those problems, that's where we now see the industry is heading. And that we're talking in terms of the wellness is coming back into play and the mental health is coming back into play. So the 19th century was the beginning of the bodybuilding and powerlifting era. That's where sport and entertainment rose to its peak, especially after the Second World War, when the world just became a lot more stable again. So Nav, can you tell me, why do you think bodybuilding and powerlifting became so popular during these times, and really it still is today?
Yeah, so I wrote, which we pretty much already covered, like the rise of Hollywood action movies, masculine characters, whether they're healthy or not, they're still what was marketed to us and what was attractive to the people. And we are cultural beings. We grab onto community and we also want to fit in. So I think the rise of Hollywood and these characters really spoke to, I know it spoke to me. You mentioned a little bit about yourself as well. Someone that comes to mind is someone like Ziz as well. Ziz was a big character, and he was a big influence on me and my bodybuilding. It was a huge influence on me. I was obsessed with bodybuilding and trying to look a certain way to gain attention and to gain stature as well. The issue with that, though, is there wasn't as much conversation surrounding the ego or the psychological pain of that road. And now we know later on that Ziz dealt with a lot of anxiety. He didn't like to step outside his house because he was embarrassed to be seen because he had his own insecurities. Although he put on a face behind the camera for the people. And I think that's where a lot of it's come from. There's not enough conversation surrounding, let's say, Ronnie Coleman, and now he's wheelchair bound, and a lot of people that were in the bodybuilding industry that have to have sleep apparatus just to sleep because of how inflamed their body is, their heart is, they can't breathe through their organs because of the amount of steroids and testosterone they've had. It was that big era was driven because of marketing, TV, movies, masculine characters, and then it wasn't, the negatives of it wasn't spoken enough of. And that's where I got caught up. And I was like, oh, this is great, awesome. I can eat heaps of food. I can go to the gym and train for like 2 to 3 hours, which was not uncommon.
Drink heaps of milk.
Eat lots of peanut, have pre-workouts that had speed in it. Like Jack 3D had speed in it. This is the industry that was promoting itself as a be a better you. And you're taking speed as a product so you could get more jacked, so you could go shirtless to a stereo sonic, look good with your shirt off or like a string you're on. And that really grabbed the attention of people that weren't self-aware, didn't have many other mentors.
Naive people. Like ourselves.
Exactly. I was, I wanted to be seen. I was insecure in myself. I was an angry person. I wanted to use that energy. So I used it towards that, which isn't necessarily the worst thing, but there's certainly way better ways to do it.
Absolutely.
And I think it was just so big because there was a lack of education towards healthier ways, and that was all that was available to me and other people at the time.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. We'd also touched on that you got into weight training just to kind of feel stronger and feel that strength within you. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that before we move on?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm the same.
What about yourself?
No,
Yeah.
I'm exactly the same.
Yeah.
There's really nothing to add there.
Yeah.
Or I suppose the only thing I would add is actually I wanted to also feel that presence and stature on the soccer field, because that's where I was. I was a soccer kid as well, but it still was the same level of insecurity that I just didn't feel strong. I didn't feel weak. And so and I was a late bloomer in terms of puberty. And so all my mates were bigger than me. And the only thing I had was speed at the time, like not amphetamines.
I had the speed.
You had the speed. You had the speed. I had the jitteriness. So, but that was, again, I still felt inadequate and I still felt small. And I also didn't want to fucking listen to anything my dad told me either.
Yeah.
I didn't have that relationship with my dad that I did take advice from him, but when I see a lot of other fatherhood relationships, I didn't. A lot of people took a lot more advice from their parents, but I kind of was that young kid that I was like, and I still are like this today. I really struggle to receive help from my parents. I'm like, I want to do it myself, but then with that level of closed offness to mentorship, along with that need to all that insecurity, I became super naive as well and went down the same track. And I used to love the pre-workouts too and smash them and drink a coffee in the morning, drink a coffee at lunchtime, drink a coffee in the afternoon on the way to the gym after work, like 5 o'clock. And only in hindsight do I realize how much that was damaging to me. And I'm just grateful now that I've already figured that out, because there's people older than me that are still doing that as well. And I'm like, wow, you've been doing what I see as really terrible for my body. You're still doing that, and it's been 10 years more than I have been doing it as well. So yes, looking at my notes, I'm like, wanted to be more attractive to teenage girls and feel stronger. I actually want to be attractive to all girls, to be honest, but at the time I was also a teenager. Wasn't expecting to pull a woman when I was 15 years old. But I am interested to know, Nav, when you were actually in bodybuilding, because you're technically in bodybuilding now as a coach, but you also were training for a competition as well. So you've been specifically in that scene more than I have, and you've got very close friends that are very successful bodybuilders as well. What comes to mind in terms of the issues and the challenges and I guess the trade-offs that you have seen firsthand in the industry coming from bodybuilding specifically?
Yeah, I would say from a psychological standpoint, the constant comparison and anxiety of not being enough. And also, I think the issue with identifying, I don't think this is only in bodybuilding, but when you identify yourself as something, and only that, when that is taken away from you, that could be very damaging on someone's ego.
Absolutely.
And you could gain a lot of depression and suicide in the bodybuilding industry because of that.
Yeah, wow.
And it could also, like Ronnie Coleman, for instance, to push your body so far past the point that you can't walk anymore is a clear sign of how much he identified himself as being the best in that industry, that he would tear himself down.
Yeah.
He would sacrifice his own legs and his own life for that purpose.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah. And I can understand pushing yourself for lengths for sport, which bodybuilding is a sport. But I think we've got to be mindful of that, and we've got to recognize that there are drawbacks to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's at what price you want to pay, because when I was looking into it, Ronnie Coleman's still the most decorated Olympia champion of his time, but he's also at best he can move around on crutches. On a good day he can hobble around on crutches, and that's I don't know if that's a trade-off worth. I think if he had a chance to look into his future and see what he was heading towards, it would be really interesting to see what would his answer be. Like, would you still take all of these medals if you knew that's where you were going to end up? And I think hindsight's a bitch, but we can actually use other people's hindsight to actually progress the rest of humanity forward as well. Is there anything else you noticed? Because I've got some notes here that. So
outside of the psychological, I would dive into like losing function. So. There's a fine point of training to gain or to stop atrophy and to gain more function.
Yeah.
There's a point where you could push that, like become wheelchair bound, where you lose function in your body.
Yeah.
Not only your body, but also your nervous system, your hormones.
Yeah, hormones is a big one, especially in women.
Yeah, exactly. So women that will push themselves into a comp, they reach drastically low body fat percentages and they play around with the hormones so much that they lose their period for months, if not years. It could happen to women. They experience all sorts of acne and other issues that come with that as well.
Definitely.
And poor hydration as well on the body. There's so many aspects from chemical, physiological, biological within the human body that could occur by putting that amount of stress in your body.
It is, yeah. I want to add, I've actually got a friend of mine, and this is just most recently actually, and it took her almost 8 weeks to get her period back after her comp, and she was expecting it to take that long because her previous comp also took the same amount of time. I'm like, man, like, I don't know if I would want to do that. Like, I don't know if you don't get my period, but I don't know if I wouldn't want to do that, and I also wouldn't want to be part of the group that encourages that as well. It's just that is a rough stint on the body as well. Yeah. And I've also just noticed the body dysmorphia is a very big one for both men and women, just being so hyper focused on that aesthetic that they do become challenged by losing that as well. And even in the I'm someone who has experience in the stripping industry, and that was a big thing is a lot of the guys, just once they were on the roids, they just couldn't not be on the roids because they felt like they couldn't put on a good show, or they felt like they weren't able to make money or get bookings if they didn't continue to take steroids. And that was a really big thing as well. And I really noticed how that amplified more. It amplified muscle mass, as also it did amplify their insecurities as well.
That actually reminds me of the amount of times in my past, especially around sexual relationships with women, I wasn't necessarily taking in the beauty that was in front of me, because I was more concerned about how I looked to her. Yeah. And so I was so caught up in making sure that I was attractive enough that I guess the focal point was on me, and that took me away from actually enjoying the experience in front of me because I was so eagerly driven towards, am I symmetrical enough? Do I look good enough on stage? Does she think I'm a bodybuilder? You know, like I need her to think I'm a bodybuilder, otherwise I'm not a bodybuilder.
Yeah, absolutely.
All sorts of stuff.
That's
like
that
that
stiffness. That's that emotional stiffness.
Yeah.
And people have a vibe, man. You know, people have a vibe.
Yeah.
Can you just eyeball that camera and tell me if that's going to drop out? It's probably going to drop out in the next minute or so. I've got a bit.
It says 25 on it, so I'm assuming.
Oh, we got 4 minutes.
Oh, beautiful.
We got 4 minutes on the camera. I mistimed it on my watch then. All right. We got a couple more minutes before we can.
I think so.
Yeah, otherwise, if it drops out, then we know Nav's eyes suck.
It's pretty small, man.
I was like, we'll blame bodybuilding. Nav's lost his vision, everyone.
I'm just looking at myself.
Yeah. Cool. So, look, there's just other things I wanted to touch base on as well in just some of the other notable issues that have stemmed from our industry that we as a business and coaches would like to see not keep occurring as well, and that's where we want to contribute our business and our efforts towards. But
it just cut out.
I just did cut out.
That's hilarious.
All right, so it was all right. Let's pause it here. We'll go mystery sound. Oh, it's called boomerang.
That makes sense.
That's the boomerang sound. All right, we're
coming back.
We're coming back. There we go. We're coming back. So we'll be back in a momento, and we're gonna go. I think I can actually see what they say if I press that. Here we go.
Don't pick that gin one.
I'm gonna pick. Oh, this one says potty. Oh Jesus! It's 50 seconds.
Can we solve it?
All right, Seaman, if you're watching this, just tune it in from now. All right, we're back. Section 2. Woo. All right. Welcome back. Welcome back to Section 2. As you can see, I basically press this button and it's like a 60-second sound effect. So I'm just toggling the volume on it. But it's actually not, it's kind of cool. It's just long.
Yeah.
It's definitely no kangaroo. Kangaroo. All right. We're on. We're back. So, just to sign off on the conversation that we were just talking about, we really wanted to spend some time discussing where the industry has been, and what we were just discussing. Well, actually, people have not even heard the gap because it's just been cut out. But the only thing I really wanted to talk about is that we didn't get to is the overuse of medical interventions such as medications and surgeries. something that's recent in the gym as well is we're getting a lot of clients that have the gastric bypass or the gastric sleeve surgery, which is, if anyone's unfamiliar with that, it's a medical procedure in which the gut or your stomach, a portion of your intestine, is either they put a sleeve over it, or they basically compress it. There's a few different ways in which they can do it. They can cut a bit out, but basically the goal is to shrink the size of your stomach so that you just can't eat as much food. And none of these people that I know, or the members or clients we've had in the past that have had these, nobody has been given any sort of assistance around changing their habits or their relationship with food, which is a very common thing as well. A lot of medical interventions are simply that. They're just a medical intervention, which very groundbreaking. And we need, if you're in a car crash, you need surgery for those things as well. Like I don't think we need to get rid of hospitals, but I think just in the way we approach a lot of the issues that society's facing with their health and well-being, there's just not enough of a conversation around what's going on with someone's relationship with themselves or their current situation. It's all around that law of cause and effect. I'm like, you feel sad, take this make you feel less sad. But these medications just numb people, these anti-anxiety medications, anti-depression medications, but they then disconnect that person further from their body, which makes them even harder for them to address their traumas, their trials, their tribulations, the things that they're struggling with as well. So I just wanted to touch base on that.
Yep.
And also, which is actually from one of my favorite podcasts, where the lady called Marissa Peer she talked about it because she actually was one of the aerobics girls with Jane Fonda, and basically everyone had bulimia and anorexia or one of those. It was, they just wanted to be skinny. They just felt they had to be. It's like, yes, they wanted, but they felt they had to be skinny. And that's just very harsh psychological imprinting that we have, our culture puts on. And I think any single person is to blame, but just by human nature, we've just ended up in this situation. And we've got to stop it. And it is stopping, but it's also, we need to assist in that transition. We need to, both as coaches, as an industry, and as a community, i.e. the people listening to this podcast as well. You also need to allow yourselves to become aware of this, to help engaging in products and services, and put your attention towards things that are more around the wellbeing district, so that we can, so that society can take that shift. It's a full, I don't know why I'm thinking of that Finding Nemo scene when they're like, swim against the rope, when they're like, the whole school of fish is like, everyone has to swim in the same direction is what I'm saying in order to create that change. So, that's a lot about some of the issues that have arisen. So I want to actually talk about focusing on the positives now, and what can we do and what should we do. So Nav, can you please kick us off with sharing how you've observed wellness come into the industry, and why do you think this has happened?
Yeah, awesome. So I think that we covered it earlier. We're just in a unique point of society and life where we could self-reflect and work on healing ourselves. And so we no longer are forced into war and dealing with the lack of food or shelter. So we have the space to expand upon ourselves in that manner. Now we could look into mental health, breath work, personal well-being practices. We could get into saunas and ice baths. We can meditate. We could do breath work. A lot of these practices have been used around the world in other traditions. And I think that's also being shared through social media. We have access to books all around the world as well. So I think with the ability to gain information wherever you are within the world, on top of having the space to actually self-reflect, to feel into our own bodies, to recognize what feels good, what doesn't feel good, we can now explore well-being in the manner of meditation, breath work, functional movements and practices that actually allow us to heal a little trauma in our body, where that wasn't necessary in the past because we were just trying to survive so we could make money and not die. So I think a lot of it's to do with that, and now that's why we're coming in, and the information surrounding like tobacco, for instance. There's so much marketing information when tobacco originally came out that it wasn't that bad. And it became this cultural thing, psychological cultural thing where everyone would have tobacco because it wasn't bad and it was a cool thing to do. And then we realized as time went on through information that it wasn't actually good for us. In fact, it was bad. And also, for instance, like the recent nutrition pyramid that came out that was saying that beef and eggs are worse than I can't even remember the name of them, but like the cereals that you would have, like
the Cheerios. They're not Cheerios, but like some just some fucking cereal. Bro.
Some cereal, some sugar cereal, and it was ranked higher than if you were to have lean beef and if you were to have fried egg.
Yeah,
which is absolutely surreal. But also shows where we're currently at in society, that there are agendas occurring, or there is money occurring within this industry, or all industries, and marketing that people gain benefit from it, whether they're doing it intentionally or whether they're just trying to survive and make money and not lose their position. And if we speak openly about a certain topic here and there, we might actually get shut down and we might get shadow banned. And so people are also mindful of what they're talking about. So I think because of all that, but now because of social media and the openness of conversation, people can express themselves, share what they're feeling. People can relate to other people that are sharing what they're feeling and experiencing. So now people are recognizing that outside of aesthetics and bodybuilding and powerlifting, there might be a deeper thing within themselves that want to feel good and live functionally. And so I think well-being's come into play because of all those factors.
You actually you triggered a bit of an aha moment within me, is that we have the space to do this healing as well. Now it's definitely it's easy to want to blame, be like, oh, this fucking bodybuilder era just made all this, like, cause of this trauma and stuff like that. But I actually had a similar conversation with my dad when he was on the phone to me. This is only a couple of months ago, and he's like, my dad was born in 1948. He's like straight up a baby boomer, and he was I don't know where you get that business mind, because I was talking about, I'm like, I want to get into some shares and stuff and put some money aside for this, and he's just like, I don't know, like, I didn't teach you that. I don't know, like, where you got it from. Your mum didn't give it to you. Like, I don't know, you didn't get it from your brother. And I'm like, Dad, like, the only reason I got here is because you gave me the space to do that, and because you worked your ass off, I got to observe how hard you had to work. And then obviously, like, I didn't get to see him as much because he was working, and I do recognize some things there, but that also helped me find a great deal of responsibility with myself. And again, quoting my favorite author, Robert Greene, he talks about every generation will leave behind baggage, and it's the next generation's duty, it's their role in order to resolve that baggage within themselves so that they don't pass it on to the next direction, but also accept that they themselves and as a generation will also leave baggage for the next generation. I think it's in the laws of human nature, which makes sense, because that would be a law of human nature, is that generationally you will receive baggage, and also you have a responsibility to move on from that. And so I think it's a really good point to raise, that as listeners of this podcast and as people engaging in the industry, is that we need to prioritize our own healing and our own strengthening of character, because there's no wars. We don't, like, our parents came from an era that was rebuilding from wars, and so of course times are going to be more black and white, more darker, and more and less abundant. And because of that, I guess we kind of have that duty to be like, all right, well, let's engage in the wellness, let's engage in the healing, and let's actually make our training and our efforts very nourishing, so that we can build a better generation for the futures ahead. So that's our call to wellness. Let's make the world a better place, everybody. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that before
I think that was pretty good.
Talk about posture and movement is the thing that I want to get to.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
So posture and movement. What are we discovering now, Nav? And what didn't we know back then?
Yeah, awesome. So I think it's probably the same narrative the whole way through.
Yeah.
We never really had to look at posture and movement because we were just trying to be the best combat we could be, so we could have a gun in our hand and shoot and fight and hopefully not die.
Yep.
And there were so many people dying in those times. When we think about the colonization of Australia, which is only just over 200 years ago, that's not a long time ago. And so all this discussion has never been up for debate or in conversation at all. And then if we're looking at especially fascia, for instance, which dives into the gait cycle, now it's only been since the 1980s that people...
Can you please explain the gait cycle before?
Yeah, so gait cycle being the walking, like the pattern of walking, the pattern of movement.
G-A-I-T.
G-A-I-T. Yeah, not the gate, not the front gate to your house. Yeah.
Just cycling your bike to the gate. What the fuck is this?
Yeah. No, the gait cycle is the natural biomechanical movement that we explore when we walk. So it's just the walking cycle.
It's walking.
Yeah. because there is a system for walking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is an actual, just like a bench press has a specific pattern.
There's a sequence of movements that happen, and there's things at play.
Exactly. And there's massive things at play. And these things weren't even looked at because for a long time, it wasn't even relevant, wasn't necessary. And we're also only looking at muscle bellies and singular joints. So we're looking at joint theory, joint by joint, instead of looking at the whole system as one. And it's only been since like the 80s that we've actually started to really look at the fascia in the body. So just like an orange, you know, I think we mentioned this on one of the other previous podcasts, but if you got the large orange part, like the what would you call it? The fleshy part that you would eat, that would be more the muscle belly, but then all the white bits around it that holds it together and brings it all together in and outside of it, that will be the fascia. And for years and years, we actually got rid of that fascia and thought there was nothing. It was just like, it's just random tissue.
We used to cut it and cut it off the body and throw it in the bin when we're cutting up dead people, not real people.
Not real people,
real people, but not alive people.
People that were already dead, preferably not by cutting.
Yeah.
We will we'll throw out the fascia and we'll just look at the muscle belly.
Yeah.
And so now since the 80s, we've looked at that system and recognized that, there is a system of fascia that holds the body together collectively as a system. And that's where we're at currently today. That now we're like, there's a gait cycle. Yeah. When we walk through space, there's multiple different aspects of movement that's occurring. Not just if we bench press or do a squat, that's not going to necessarily help our walking cycle. Yeah. And this is where we are at now currently with posture and movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I wanted to add in that that probably this is the cycle that I wanted to touch base. I've just been holding on to I just wanted to mention the cycle, but we started not necessarily fascia was being discussed, but what we know now about fascia and these fascial lines and how each limb can talk to each other basically by connecting, by transferring force through it. Back in the early martial art days, they were practicing movements like that. And then we went through the phase of being more we started with that phase of being more movement orientated and finding better ways for the body to produce force, to produce more accurate and better, more efficient force to improve our ability to engage in combat, whether that was hand-to-hand combat with throwing, punching, kicking, dodging, or actually striking with a spear or something. Was that my laptop that just made that noise?
Oh, it was mine.
Oh, it was yours. Okay. Yeah. I was just hit my mute button. But then as times transition and we got into this bodybuilding area, then we got this very microscopic approach. We stopped looking at the body globally and went back into be like, I want that part of my shoulder to stick out more than that guy's part of that shoulder. And it's like we became very narrow-minded. And people won't find it funny because they don't see what I see, but I find, because I'm a runner, right? I find watching bodybuilders run one of the funniest things because you can spot it. You can just spot it from a mile away because there's no rotation through the torso. Yeah, and it's that stiffness. It's that stiffness, and it's what I've noticed about as we build these athletic physiques. We've been so focused on this aestheticness that functionally these people, they can't throw, they can't punch, they can't kick, and that's why some of the most viral videos on the internet outside of cat videos that I'm aware of is like bodybuilder gets his ass handed to him or like big meathead gets taken down by a small guy, you know. And it's these big muscular dudes that have done majority bilateral training. And what bilateral means is B-I, two arms or two legs, you know, squats, bench presses, deadlifts, common rows, right?
All in the sagittal plane as well.
All in the sagittal plane, which I still engage in a bunch of those movements, and I still take a lot of my clients through those movements. They're not inherently bad, but a singular focus on those are destructive to the person's gait cycle and their overall well-being. And so I think the better way at the moment is having that hybrid model where people can learn the current movements that are popular in the industry today, but could learn the new movements of where the industry is heading with these more global movement patterns. So I just wanted to add in that that we're now seeing, that cycle's starting to do a full loop. We're starting to see the emerge, and UFC is like the biggest it's ever been. All the fighting is becoming huge as well, and also I'm noticing a lot more a lot more influencers are becoming more hybrid athletes, and more the runners are becoming popular again. So I'm noticing it myself. Is that the influencer scene is starting to make a transition as well, which is exciting for me, because that's also where I would end up if I became an influencer. I'm a fucking influencer now. Follow my shit now. But that's also what I see is more optimal. Is that ability to not only look like you can produce force, but actually produce force.
And what do we do the most? Right? Like we move, right? We walk, we stand, we sit, we throw, we pick up. Like, these are the things that we do in our everyday life. And if we don't explore those at all, we're going to degenerate, we're going to atrophy, and we're going to have negatives in our physiological and also neurological pathways within our body. On top of that, if you're training and building hypertrophy, so muscle gain, just focusing purely on the building of your muscle bellies from a singular joint, that's going to have negative patterns, like you mentioned on the walking cycle, the gait cycle. And so I think you said it right. It's not necessarily that these bilateral sagittal plane movements are the worst thing in the world, but a lack of awareness and exploration of our natural evolutionary bipedal movements like walking, standing, running, throwing. If we're not exploring those, we are living as bipedal creatures. If you're going to ignore your own nature and your own system, you're going to have repercussions. There's going to be pain, there's going to be discomfort, and you're not going to function as powerfully as you can as a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. We are anatomy. That's probably a terrible statement, but we are anatomy.
I think we all get it. I get it. I hope it right.
Be anatomy, everyone. But, there is a set of principles that the body works by, and bipedals being one of those things. Like, we don't hop like fucking kangaroos. Sometimes we do.
Yeah.
But our primary mode of movement is walking and running and jogging. Otherwise, you'll end up like fucking poor Ronnie. I don't want to talk bad about Ronnie, but Ronnie's fucked. Yeah. Ronnie Coleman, everybody.
Yeah.
Is it? He was one of my early inspirations, but he's cooked. So, do you know can you give me some examples, Nav, of where we're seeing some professionals, I guess, like kicking off in the world, and where we're starting to actually notice where more movement is coming into play?
Yeah. So Charles Poliquin, you wrote most of these people down.
Yeah.
But they're great people. Charles Poliquin was a great one, especially because Charles Poliquin, he held onto a lot of the original hypertrophy strength training, especially I think from Germany, and I can't remember if it was
Germany and Russia,
and that he even transcribed and wrote new books out of himself. He learnt those languages so he could rewrite those books off of his own knowledge.
Weapon,
which is amazing.
Self-taught Russian, so he could read Russian training.
Because
books.
the transcripts from Russian to English, because the people that were transcribing those didn't understand movement and training correctly, they were transcribing them incorrectly. So he learned how to speak that language to do it himself, which is unreal. But yeah, his structural balancing, like you mentioned, Ido Portal, who was more a movement, flow movement, sort of martial arts, sort of movement training sort of guy.
Yeah.
My favorite, which I'm diving straight into, is Naudi from Functional Patterns.
Yep.
I think he's onto something that has yet to be seen, and I think he's well ahead of the industry in regards to
he's too far ahead. That's what I would say.
I would agree, and he's aware of that as well. To a
degree. To a degree. Yeah. It's hard to go backwards, right?
Massively, and he's someone that wants to continue to explore, and he's stuck in that place of how do I explore and keep moving forward, but also meet the people where they're at to teach them these sort of patterns and movements. And
exactly right.
I'm grateful. We do have to experience that ourselves, actually. So I totally rate to where he's at. And FRC, which
functional range conditioning.
Which is Dr. Andrea Spinea. Yeah. They're amazing. And then if we dive into well-being, like breath being covered by James Nesser, so a journalist that studied breathing.
Very popular book.
And then Matthew Walker that studies sleep as well. So
that's a big one as well.
These people that are now like studying practices, like you mentioned, martial arts that has been done anecdotally for thousands of years. But as we started to dive into like capitalism and infrastructure and science, became so heavy science-based that we're so stuck tunnel visioning on a singular point that we weren't allowing ourselves to look at anecdotal evidence, and we weren't allowing ourselves to look at the greater system.
Yeah, we definitely lost our intuition a bit, I think.
Massively.
Very robotic, very this means that.
Because we did that from a societal standpoint of science and looking at information, but then also, like you mentioned, chemical base. You know, a lot of people are on all sorts of different chemicals, painkillers. There was cocaine for a while there. Still going around.
Wish I was around for those days.
Which was founded by a doctor, by accident. There's so many other things that, but those things are still play in hospitals.
They are,
the hours that these doctors and nurses have to do come from an old history of one of the doctors. I can't remember his name, but he was a coke addict, and then he just kept doing coke and kept doing 72-hour work days and making everyone work ridiculous hours, and that's still in play today. But there's some people.
Everybody's got vices. It's fun to be like, oh, that'd be hilarious going to a fucking Dr. Coke bender, but imagine that being your actual career and your actual existence, of just like living off that. That's what Hitler was on, right? Hitler was just coked out of his mind, just going crazy. Don't know. You might be fun for maybe once every couple of years, the Vegas trip.
Oh, I thought you were going to say turn into a Nazi or something.
No. I feel like turning into a Nazi. No interest in being a Nazi, unfortunately. Sorry, Nazis out there. I'm not pro-Nazi. Look, that was really good. So that's I think the listeners now have a bit of an understanding of where the industry is now becoming with the introduction of wellness and wanting to prioritize movement more. And I think we should start to help them on how to make that more actionable. What are we going to see? What can they do? What can they actually how is this? What's this going to look like? I think if we help paint what the picture currently is and what we see is the currently picture and what we envision the future is going to look like, I think that'll really help the listeners start to move with that. So we know that there's a lot of new ground in the industry, and also what that does mean, again with that speed of information, is it means our listeners can potentially get themselves confused on then what steps to take first. So I think we give them some guidance on what things to focus on. And also for most people, they are quite newer. Most people in this podcast will be newer in their training journey, and even the ones that have lifting experience, they may still be new to this holistic approach. So Nav, where should they start?
They should start with learning how to stand and breathe correctly.
Yeah, get it.
Which sounds so basic.
Learn how to sort your shit. You're useless. No, I'm kidding.
I was thinking about really diving into it, but in reality, I think...
You can have some of this, by the way. I don't know if you want.
I'm good, thank you.
That's why I put it in the middle.
I appreciate it. I did pick up on that.
It was a bit of a bad idea because I'm going to have to push I'm eating beef jerky, by the way, if anyone's wondering. But anyway.
Eat jerky. That is the first step.
Eat jerky, especially Josh's homemade jerky.
Yeah, so I think people should start with figuring out how to stand correctly, how to walk, how to run, how to throw, how to breathe. And once you understand the body's system of how to achieve those, then you could expand into other practices. I think that should be the foundation. Even if you want to expand into sports, like if you want to be an ultramarathon runner, if you want to do Muay Thai like myself, I know that me pushing my body through Muay Thai is not the healthiest thing in the world, especially combat sport, right? I'm taking blows. I think I have a slight bruise on my face because my coach caught me with a good hand the other day. It was good. It was really good. It got me good. But I know it's not the healthiest, but I know that my foundation should come from the ability to function in my everyday life, and then I could expand into the specifics of training for Muay Thai. So regardless of whether you're listening to this and you're a bodybuilder, a powerlifter, an athlete of any sport, I think you should, if you don't know how to stand correctly, how to walk, how to run, how to throw, and how to breathe correctly, I think that's going to impact your function in everyday life.
Absolutely.
And then that's going to impact you on your sport anyway.
Yeah.
If you have all that stress in your body, you had that stress on your lifestyle because you're not functioning in your life, then that's going to impact your ability to show up for your craft, for your art, for your sport. And so I pretty much will leave it at that for those, because we can't really dive into over a podcast how to breathe, how to stand, walk, run, throwing in a short span anyway. People want to find out more about that. Come to our Instagram, come to our gym, hit us up. This is what we do every day.
Join our gym.
Yeah.
Buy our services.
Yeah.
That's what this podcast is about. We don't care about you. We just want to sell our services.
It's all about money.
Yeah, it's all about money.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just want to steal all the money. Fuck the industry.
Yeah.
That's how we do it.
Yeah.
We're brainwashing you right now.
Exactly.
So buy our programs. We actually don't. We should actually, in fairness, we should really get some. We do have some programs in the app, but we should get more. Now that this podcast starting to take off as well, we should have some more resources available for the listeners. So, more resources coming soon. I've just got a lot of chili in my mouth from eating this. I can feel like that. So, Nav, can you maybe just give like one simple drill for that someone could follow just straight away, like whilst they're either in this podcast or as soon as they finish this? What's something they could do like that to start practicing their posture or their breath?
Yeah, I think we'll go over the standing posture and breathing because that's what we did even today in our mobility workshop.
Exactly what we did, yeah.
Yeah. So firstly, if we want to look at the standing posture, we want to make sure that all of our joints throughout our body are stacked upon each other. Yeah. And so if we're looking at from the heel to the knee, to the hip, to the ribs, to the shoulders, even to the head, we want all of that to be in a nice alignment.
Yep.
We want to make sure that our pelvis is tilted under and up. Is that right? Under and up? Like in a is that probably a posterior tilt?
Yeah, posterior pelvic tilt.
Yeah, yeah. Just trying to think of the perfect term. I would probably say
I like how Tim Ferriss explains it. Like if your pelvis was a bowl of water,
tipping water out. You don't want the water tipping out forward. You want it to be sitting in and upright.
Sit your bowl level. Most people naturally stand with water pouring out the front.
Yeah, exactly. And that would normally create a slight arch in your lower back. If you're experiencing an arch in your lower back, then you want to tuck the bum under in the other direction so your pelvis is kind of coming forward a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that should help neutralize the lower back. And then naturally your lower abdomen will pull in.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to be sucking your lower abdomen in. If your pelvis is tilted correctly in a posterior tilt, then that should naturally pull in.
Yeah.
From there, you should be able to, it'll take practice. It'll be uncomfortable at first, but you want to be driving your chest forward from your solar plexus, your sternum. Yeah. And then once you're in that position, you want to breathe deeply into your diaphragm, which is your ribs.
Yeah, I'm talking to you, listener. If you're driving in your car right now, you can do this in the car, like literally as we speak. And if you're standing, you can also do this as we speak as well. Sorry, continue, Nav.
Yeah, yeah. So now your pelvis should be tucked under, your lower abdomen should be pulled in, you should be driving your chest forward, and now breathing in and out through your ribs in all directions, forward, to the sides, to the back, like a big balloon.
Yeah.
And that's going to create space for your heart to pump more blood and oxygen, and for your organs to also massage and move within the body, your intestines to move within the body as well. And that creates space for the breath. So that's probably what I would start with first, and then practicing a 6 seconds in, 6 second out breathing pattern. Yeah. And if you can't do that, then your nervous system is always going to be in a state of sympathetic. It's going to be in a stress state because you're breathing too quickly. You're breathing too quickly, you're pumping too much blood, too much oxygen throughout the body in such concession rapidly, instead of allowing it to deeply pull through, especially through your nose, which filters a lot of the breath and also vasodilates our blood to allow more oxygen through our cells and our blood and our body as well. So I'll probably start off with that, just basic posture, basic breathing. Once you have that posture and alignment and breathing, you should be able to move into other movements from there.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Well said, Nav. So we're going to do our... hold on. There we go. I'm too scared to press all the other buttons. We're going to do... Oh, look at that. It's just dropped out again.
Perfect.
All over it. We're going to do another camera reset, and then we're going to head into the tail end of this episode. Okay. Fingers crossed this is not too long. All right, let's try this one. That's the didgeridoo. Let's go 2 didgeridoos. All right, we're back for section 3. Now, where are we? Come on, laptop. Show me where we're at. We just talked about workshops. What we teach in our workshop, posture and breath first. So what about training, Nav? What about training? All right. Now that people are okay, cool, I need to prioritize my breath and my training, and that's it. That's an exercise that they can start practicing at home, in the shower, when they're standing. When they're driving, they can learn to sit more upright. And that's the practice of awareness, right? But how how would someone's training evolve to integrate more functional training, maybe being more conducive to their gait cycles, more in line with where the industry is heading, and also, in our opinion, where it should be heading?
Yeah.
What would a training program look like?
Yeah, so I like the information in regards to hypertrophy. So focusing on 40, 70 reps per muscle group per day, up to 3 times a week. So if we want to look at the science in regards to hypertrophy, that's the perfect rep ranges. 40 to 70 reps per muscle group per day, up to 3 times per week. So totaling anywhere from 120 to 210 reps of a muscle group. However, I would then expand outside of just focusing on a singular muscle group and look at the functional lines, the fascial lines within our body. So moving forward, the anterior line, moving back through the posterior line, even through the lateral lines, side to side, then the functional lines. So crossing over from our right pec, our right shoulder, over to across our body over to our left inner thigh, so our left adductor. And that also is in play on our backside. So if we have our right shoulder on the backside, crossing over straight diagonal line down to my left glute. And so if we're looking at those functional lines as well, there's also arm lines. But in short, in short, Josh was doing a movement that it was anatomy trains? No, it was
NKT.
NKT, wasn't it?
Dave.
Yeah. NKT that, he was doing some rotations.
We called it clocks and cogs, he called it.
Yeah.
He developed his own movement system.
Yeah.
It just looks funny. You're listening to the podcast, you won't see what we're doing, but it just looks funny. Just waving your arms around.
Yeah, I'll keep to the 47 reps, but instead of looking at singular muscle groups, learn how to find out about the fascial lines, about the running lines, the throwing lines, the pulling lines, the pushing lines, not just from a bilateral stance, but contralateral. So one side is pushing singular while the other side is holding or pulling at the same time, for instance, as well. So I will look at it more from that standpoint, because then you could explore the functions of your body and how they play out within your everyday life.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, most of you probably had no fucking idea what Nav just said based on all those words. And that's the thing that we're actually working on. And this is in terms of how to make this information more achievable. So you understand why, or you can probably understand why we've noticed Nowdy, the guy who figured a lot of this out, is so fucking angry at everyone, because it's like, why can't you figure this out? But it's not complicated, but it appears complicated based on where the industry is at right now. So what I would be recommending to you, if you didn't understand a single word of what Nav just said, go onto Google Images and search fascial lines. FASCIAL. Lines. LINES.
You made that one right.
LIONS lines. Fascial lines. So there are 12 fascial lines, fascial lines. There's 12 of them, but primarily there's about 4 to 6 main ones that we look at, because the arm line's one which you talked about, which we don't really. It's not the priority yet. It's more about the. It's called the anterior line or the superficial front line, the superficial back line.
Of the arm lines?
Nah, the what are those front lines called?
I think it's just your superficial front line and superficial back line, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And then you've got superficial lateral line.
Yeah.
I might be butchering these. And then you've got posterior oblique sling and anterior oblique sling. See, all these big syllable words are coming out and everyone's like, what does contralateral mean? Yeah. So what I want you to do is, the best way to just get your head around this concept is just Google fascial lines. Just Google the 12 fascial lines and you will see images of what we're talking about. There's a line of muscles that all join together, and they are the same muscles that you know, but they're actually just joined together, which the same that join isn't drawn in common. Excuse me, I just jerked my burp. Burped my jerky. They're commonly not drawn in the anatomy charts, which is why I'm just telling you to go and Google images. Once you get the visual, it just makes so much more sense. And there's plenty of YouTube videos out there as well. And we should probably also at some point make some videos just explaining them ourselves, so our listeners have in-house education for all these concepts. So I really liked what you talked about there and introducing them into their training. So again, keeping it simple is that have a look at finding ways to prioritize your spine. your spine inside your training, because your spine can actually flex forward, so it can roll forward, it can roll backwards, it can roll left, it can roll right. And it can also twist and rotate as well. And so, yes, we think, the common bench presses and the squats and the deadlifts, they're all still great movements, and they're very common in building strength and power in these days, absolutely. But you also need to learn how to prioritize these more single, more dynamic, more complex movements. They are complex. They are harder to learn. And if you are someone who is very intimidated about going to the gym and who is very you don't want to look like you're doing stupid things. You don't want people to fucking laugh at you. If you have the ability to train these stuff at home, you can practice these movements. But honestly, even though these rotational movements and all of these fascial line movements are probably going to be better for your posture and your well-being, if you're in that state where you're like, I can't even do a fucking bench press without feeling silly, just master your bench press. That's Josh's advice. I would say do the exercises that you feel comfortable with, that you can allow you to get into the gym consistently. We still want you to be building those habits and that confidence inside the building. But just know that at some point in your training journey, and ideally sooner rather than later, we start to integrating more of these dynamic, these dynamic movements. One of the members came in, right? And he's like, so he one of the members, I won't say who it is, but then he told his friend, and then his friend told me, and he's like, I went in the gym on Sunday morning and I saw the other owner, and he was talking about you. He's like, I saw the other owner and he was training, and he was like, I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing some fucking dance moves. And I just was like, I'm not going to fuck with that guy. And you must have been doing some kettlebell swings or some cable work or something. Yeah. But I was just excited to it was actually my client. I was like, you just tell him that Nav was doing functional patterns work. And that's the stuff that I want to teach you at some point, but we're just not there yet. And that it's just super dynamic that a lot of people that are complete beginners are just like, what the fuck is that? Yeah. But that's where a lot of the industry is. And that's probably why Nadi gets so frustrated, because he's trying to pioneer the industry, but I think he's just a little bit too far ahead, that people are just like, man, you're scaring me, So that was my funny story. But again, find the exercises you can feel comfortable with, but please understand that moving towards improving your gait cycles, GAIT cycles, your unilateral, your rotational work, the things that are going to make you better at throwing, punching, kicking, all that kind of stuff, climbing, running, those are the movements that are not only going to help your aesthetic, but they're going to make you feel good. They will make your body feel good. And if you want to get your boulder shoulders and you want to get your bicep curls in so you can get ooge arms, you can do that, but just do that alongside this movement training as well. That's, I think, for most people, what the most optimal way to do it is. Do the stuff that you feel that you need to do to make you feel pretty, but also do the stuff that you need to do to make you feel good. Otherwise, you're going to be doing the pretty stuff at the expense of feeling bad on the inside, and that's a recipe for disaster. So, in terms of the classic chest day, back day, leg day, arms day, which we see most people commonly doing, or, the guys are all like International Chest Day, which is every day. And then for women, it's International Booty Day, which is also every day. What's a better way that people can start organizing their days around their training, knowing that, okay, I am familiar with some of this strength training, but now Nav and Josh are telling me to do all this fucking dance move shit. How do I make that work in a 7-day plan?
I think 7-day plan is probably a bit challenging because most people wouldn't do that, right? Yeah,
within 3 sessions.
3 sessions. I will probably even just explore full bodies. If you're doing 3 days of training a week, you want to stimulate your body, every muscle group within 3 days, within at least 3 times within a week. Right. And so if we even look at protein synthesis. So when we train, so there's 2 ways to stroke protein synthesis. Eat protein, which is pretty cool. If you eat protein, you're going to stimulate muscle growth. Win-win.
Who would have known?
Right? So you could literally just stimulate muscle growth by eating Josh's jerky.
Josh's beef jerky. It's fucking good, by the way.
The second one is by stimulating the tissue, by moving. And when we exercise and when we move, there's a 48 to 72 hour window where our protein synthesis, our muscle growth process is highest, right? I do believe it's at the 48-hour mark it starts to actually peak and drop. It starts to actually decline from there. And so you're probably better off actually peaking each muscle group at least 2 to 3 times a week. So if you're only training 3 times a week, the best way for you to do that to train is for you to do 3 full body sessions and then stimulate each muscle group or each pattern, each movement line for, like I mentioned, 40 to 70 reps per one per day, depending on where you're at within your fitness. For an everyday person, you probably want to do like 3 sets of 12 of a specific pattern. And then if you get into more advanced, you might want to do more sets or 2 exercises each one, which also means you might be in the gym for a little bit longer. So it's all specific to how much time you spend in the gym. And that will be my advice. If that covers that.
No, very good. Very, very good. In terms of outside the gym now, we're talking about, all getting more movement into their training, but also where the industry is heading, again, prioritizing wellness and prioritizing our mental health. So what are some of the things that we can be doing for outside of the gym, and what can we recommend that our members, our clients, and the listeners start to engage in that's also going to encourage their mental health to improve alongside of their physical training with this rotation and all this extra movement? What are some things that we can start to apply?
I'm just going to use yours because yours are great, but I actually have been, I'm going to speak to the aesthetic.
I did write Nav, Josh,
Yeah.
It's us. We're
It
in
is
this,
us.
we're
It
in
is
this
us.
together. And I'm just munching on jerky. I've eaten the last piece, everybody. So
I am going to firstly cover protein though, because a lot of people think that they need to train specifically for hypertrophy to be aesthetic and to have muscle mass and low body fat percentage. However, there's also a whole complexity of things that impact our body's ability to maintain muscle mass and to lose body fat. And an easy one is eat lots of protein. So eat at least, I would aim for about 2 times your body weight. So in kilograms in protein.
yeah,
So 2 times your body weight in kilograms in protein is what I would have in a day. And then don't overconsume on other stuff. Like most of the reasons why you're most likely higher in body fat percentage and lacking in muscle mass is you're overconsuming in the crap. So
eating bullshit.
Yeah.
And also from just side note from the Eliza podcast episode for the private members group, too much alcohol. That's a big thing. Eliza's a holistic nutritionist, and alcohol's a big one. People drinking during the week.
Yeah, because it's a toxin to the body, impacts our sleep, the calories itself as well. Yeah.
And it decreases protein synthesis.
Synthesis.
Protein synthesis.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's probably because it goes through the liver and it's a toxin and stuff.
Yeah, I think she just calls it alcohol's a cock block was our catchphrase. It just it interferes with like too many, like more things than I can remember than she said.
Yeah. So it's a cock block. So is stress.
Absolutely.
Stress is a big cock block.
Stress is a big one.
Morning and night routines, I think, are really good because then you can build a consistent routine with your sleep.
Paramount, everybody, and take your fucking phones out, your night routines and your morning routines. Just delete them somehow.
Staying hydrated, getting plenty of water.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
Extreme temperature exposure, hot or cold.
Yeah, that's good. Like either saunas or ice baths. Because do you know what's another thing I keep seeing is, like, I watch in Gerard's one of his TikToks, and he was like, have a cold shower in the morning. And I noticed this happens a lot now. If someone doesn't want to take responsibility for their health, for example, if you say like take a cold shower, people are like, oh, I live in Europe and it's too cold to have cold showers. So I'm like, if you live in Europe, have a fucking sauna. There you go. That's why I said hot or cold, because I just wanted to call some people out that someone else is like, oh, like we live in a thing where we can't get sunlight. There's not enough of it. And I'm like, well, when it's out, still get some, and then use an artificial light, because you can still get some benefit out of it,
Yeah, and get out of the heater and expose yourself to the actual cold.
Here's a habit, everyone. Stop making excuses.
I didn't see that one there, but that's a good one.
I'm going to put it in caps lock right here. I'm like, anyway, no, I've said it.
Self-awareness activities are great as well. Journaling, reflection on how you feel. How's your breathing? Are you able to actually lay in bed and relax and get a good night's sleep? If you're not, what do you believe is impacting that? If you don't know what it is, if you had to guess, what would you guess it is?
It's a great question.
Yeah, because we know the answer.
Yeah.
What else? Well, you
also,
got some here.
I just wanted to add on the self-awareness activities with journaling. I've actually moved to freestyle journaling. I think journaling, in a couple of episodes ago, I showed my planner, my journal, and that's got like a notes page where I can write thoughts down, and then I've also got like it's got sections for what are my goals, all this kind of stuff. I've actually pushed that aside at the moment, and I'm full blank page. I've just transitioned to a blank page guy, and it's been really beneficial for me as well.
Yeah.
So.
I think that'll be the ideal outcome that you want, just like meditation. It's like starting with something guided or with some music or something. But if you could get to doing meditation just seated without any noise and just being able to be in the surroundings is the most powerful place you could be in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm actually craving a bit of that as well. Some silence. So any sort of meditation or mental focus training, like I did group them together in the dot point, but I do want to make a note that as Nav just said, not all meditations are a mental focus training, because that's a very directional or a directive-based meditation, where a lot of beneficial meditations are actually sitting in nothingness and sitting in silence, rather than something like TM, transcendental meditation, when you're focusing on a mantra or a word over and over and over and over again. That still gives you that focal point. Whereas if you would actually just actually sit in the absence, you'd actually experience an interesting shift within your psyche as well. I also think reading and more formal types of content consumption, especially these days. Reading.
What, not TikTok?
Not TikTok. Yeah.
Oh,
what talk?
No, yeah.
What talk? Yeah. Just a more formal type of content consumption, because even the act of doing that will help you really sustain your ability to learn effectively. Because the truth is, yes, it's becoming a problem that, there's going to be heaps of where our attention spans are getting shorter and all this kind of stuff. That's what's happening to the general population. Every person that's wanting to be a leader, all the people that are going to be the next generation of leaders and politicians and CEOs, they're all doing it. We're all doing it. It's just the vast majority of people that they're not representative of the whole entire population. And so I'm not really saying that our attention span is shortening. I'm more saying that I'm more questioning, who do you want to be? Do you want to be someone who just allows their is part of that crowd, or do you want to be the part of the crowd of people that are getting this shit together and taking more responsibility and control of their life? So make time as a habit to engage in more formal types of content consumption, and that will filter out a lot of the bullshit that you're getting on things like TikTok and YouTube Shorts as well. Because again, another thing I'm seeing pop up from clients is I learned this the other day, or they say they learned this, but they didn't say that, okay, I'm actually going to sit down, I'm going to do some reading, I want to read on this subject. They were actually just mindlessly scrolling, and they came across a tip or a hack, and they'd be like, oh, that's a good idea. Yep. And then they applied that to their life. And sometimes these things help, but you can't let that replace your ability to learn. Yeah. Yep. And with that, I also wanted to add on is as a separate habit is to focus on long form education or information. So before I said more formal types, which is like reading books and stuff like that, but also on that note is long form education or information. So as we just discussed, the world's currently in a short attention span phase. It's very distracting and encumbersome for the mind. So encumbersome means just very heavy for the mind. It's a lot of information to process. And I think we really, now's more time more than ever to separate ourselves from that chaos and find ways to keep our minds stable and healthy. So that's a really big thing for me. Another one is eating natural foods and packet foods as well, just generally speaking as well, like my beef jerky, make your own beef jerky, but eating the natural stuff, that's more of a nutrition based thing as well. Nav, anything else?
A movement-based activity, so something that isn't just aesthetics.
Yes.
Something where you're able to express yourself, so dancing, sport, running,
jazz
fighting,
hips,
throwing, jazz hips.
Yeah, that was in my workshop today.
Anything like that, and then you could be the weirdo in the gym that no one wants to mess with.
Yeah. Jazz hips is actually I was telling everyone in the mobility workshop that you ran today is to put some jazz on and move your hips like a salsa dancer, but do it at home when no one's looking. But you're teaching your body to be dynamic and move and integrate, which is really cool. So I think just some other things I wanted to add is just like some things that people can start trying out for themselves. Like, I know this is ancient, but if you haven't tried yoga, give it a whirl and give it a solid crack as well. Like, you don't always have to, not everyone has to do yoga, but learning to have a practice where you just focus more on movement and slowing down and allowing that to expose to you where your weaknesses and imbalances are. Yoga is a really great practice for that. Breath work is a really, really big one as well. Ice baths and infrared saunas and float tanks. They're just all things that are quite popular in the industry right now that I agree with, and I think they're really nice. Like, I might even go for a float tomorrow. It's not the thing that's going to save your life, but they are things that will help you discover more about what your body is capable of, and they will help you find ways to keep strengthening your well-being and your mental health and all that kind of stuff as well. So pretty much ready to wrap up, I think.
Yep.
I'm just paranoid now. I actually think I can. Nah, anyway, we'll fuck around with these buttons later. Do you?
Should we smash it out? I do have to bounce.
Yeah. I'm just sorry. I mean, do you? As in,
I do have a thing. Yeah.
You do have a thing. I just don't want to say the word in case. Yeah. All right, so we're into the mystery items section. So, Nav, show me your mystery item. What has he got? Nav's brought a mystery item.
I thought about this. I wanted something that is going to be supportive of the future of fitness. Super basic. It's a resistance band.
It's a resistance band.
From the SMA gym.
From the gym.
The reason why I grabbed this is because there's a lot of movements that we could explore contralaterally, rotationally, that will help us with the gait cycle with our movement, that we can't necessarily get from using dumbbells or barbells and what have you. So real simple. I wanted something that's really practical that people could grab. You could go to any fitness store, you could Rebel Sport, you could buy a power band, a resistance band, and you could utilize it for a lot of the exercises that we incorporate in our training with ourselves and our clients as well. And if anyone wants any help in regards to what movements they could do with a resistance band, a power band, they could hit us up, reach out. We have our own app with all these exercises on there as well. So there's no excuses, guys. There's literally no excuse not being able to move. It's as simple as being able to spend $50, if not less, on some bands, utilize these bands, start getting some rotation and some contralateral movement in, some step rotations, step presses, step rows, all sorts of things we could explore that will improve our gait cycle and our movement.
Beautiful. Well done, Nav. Nice work.
Yeah.
And my mystery item, did you see what I brought in?
No idea. I didn't see.
It's this.
Oh, beautiful. That's the Shakti Mat, is it?
It's a Shakti Mat.
Yeah,
it is a
I haven't
Shakti
seen
Mat.
one of those in a while, actually.
These are fucking sick. So it's a big thing. So I'm like having to hold it up in front of the camera. This is the Shakti. Oops. Just hit the mic with it. It's the Shakti Mat. This is a very special Shakti Mat because it's Kirsty's.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Thanks, Kirsty. It's mine, by the way, now. No, she got it as a present and it's too sharp for her. And so then she let me use it. And then I've had it for like a year and a half now.
That's a long time.
And every time she finds out that I've got it, she's like, "Have you got my Shakti?" I'm like, "I've got it, Kirsty." And she's like, "Yeah, it's mine still." And I'm like, "Do you want it back?" She's like, "Not yet." But the Shakti Mat is not about showing that the Shakti Mat. A Shakti Mat. Before to explain to the listeners what a Shakti Mat is, it's just an acupressure mat. So very similar to those nail beds that I think the Indians or the Hindus or something used to lie on. It's just basically laying on a bunch of sharp stuff, but it really opens up the body. And it's also because it's so painful to start off with, you have to really relax into it and get really present with yourself and into that moment, and then that pain starts to alleviate. But it's not the Shakti Mat itself. It's the fact of choosing to engage in activities that bring more awareness to you around your body, and it's choosing to engage in activities that are going to improve your recovery and your sense of self. So the thing I wanted to bring in, but I can't bring a float tank in, but I have a float tank membership. And that means I'm on like a subscription every month. I get it debits my card and I get a token where I can go in and just do this tank. And that's a really great thing for me that I love, because I float in the magnesium and it's an hour of dead silence in pitch black. And it's a very therapeutic thing for me to do. So it's not the float tank itself. It's the act of engaging in regular therapy in order to allow your body to dissipate a lot of the tension. And I think that's a really big part of what the industry is and should be in the future, and integrating that. So that's basically it for this episode. We don't really have anything to recommend in terms of resources, apart from maybe just going on Google Images and having a look at the fascial lines. Yeah. We did quote Naudi Aguilar from Functional Patterns. There's a lot of stuff that he talks about on YouTube. He might be a bit complicated to watch, but at least you'll be able to understand what's going to become more popular. And functional range conditioning is also good. They've got a lot of good athletes as well. So Dr. Andrea Spinea, Functional Range Conditioning. And if you are interested in reading a book, I'd recommend the Breath book by James Nestor, Matt Walker's Sleep books as well. Everything that really helps you get more awareness around what the mind and the body is doing in conjunction with your training. So, Nav, anything else before we kangaroo out of here?
Let's kangaroo out. Kookaburra now.
Kookaburras.
Kangaroo.
There's the kangaroo. There, I found it. All right.
Kangaroo.
Thanks for listening. Health and happiness, everyone. And we are looking forward to seeing you.
Kangaroo.
Fucking shut up. We're looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Adios, amigos.
Take care.